Committee meeting, which will be run according to the Bagley-King Meeting Act as required by law. We plan to end around 2 o'clock. I would like to welcome the members of the Selection for Advisory Boards Committee. Who are with me today, Member Sullivan and Member Vu. Please note that all members are participating remotely as indicated on the agenda. Before we begin, a small note to members, please ensure that you remain on camera throughout the duration of the meeting to be in compliance with the requirements set forth in the Bagley-King Opening Meeting Act. Okay, the purpose of today's meeting is to approve the application, the rubric, and selection process plan for both the Data and Tools and Community Engagement Advisory Boards. Before delving into the review of the application, rubric, and selection process, it is helpful to provide a bit of background on the advisory boards and selection of new members and provide the big picture context on the advisory board's demographics. I would like to remind the committee that our work here needs to be within the scope laid out in the Charter and Governance Manual, which we will walk through during the agenda item 2 in more detail. Additionally, we are joined today by General Counsel Julia Blair, who is available to answer any questions that we may have. Given the extensive workload ahead of us, I am hopeful that we can focus our discussion around big picture ideas and the vision for advisory board member recruitment and selection. Before we dig into today's work, I wanted to take a look at what lies ahead in front of us. In total, there are 8 items on today's agenda. Our agenda, which is posted on C2C's website, specifically notes the agenda items on which we will be accepting public comment. Today, members will be voting on 2 agenda items, and we will open it up for public comment 4 times. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask that Mary Kay Jones please call the roll.
Member Gonzalez-Vasquez.
Present.
Member Jez. Member Nellam. Member Sullivan.
Present.
Member Vu.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We will now move on to agenda item 2, presentation on the background of the advisory boards and an overview of the selection of new members. I would like to invite Mary Kay Cruz Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, to present this agenda item today. Thank you, Mary Kay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good morning, members. I'm Mary Kay Cruz Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships. I know members have their materials in front of them, but if you're a member of the public that's tuning in, maybe for the first time, you can please feel free to find all of our materials that we're referencing on the website. And there is a staff report for this exact item. At the February 28th, 2025 Governing Board meeting, the committee charter for the Selection of Advisory Boards Committee was approved, and 5 governing board members were designated to form this committee. So thank you to the 3 members that have joined us here today. Your role today is to finalize the selection and recruitment materials and to identify a candidate pool for governing board approval. Echoing what Chair Gonzalez-Vasquez has said here today, there is a great amount of work ahead of us, and I would like to take this opportunity to set the stage for today's member deliberation by providing the background of the advisory boards and the selection of new members. I will be centering this discussion on the roles and responsibilities between the office and the committee and breaking down the timeline of activities in this process. There's a lot to follow, there's a lot to track, so stay tuned. So pursuant to Education Code 10865, there are 2 advisory boards that provide input and feedback to the governing board. The Data and Tools Advisory Board and Community Engagement Board, Community Engagement Advisory Board, goodness, that's what they're called. Those are our 2, and listed here in front of us are their respective responsibilities and what we ask them to do. So let's take a look at advisory board selection, which is brilliant. Thank you. So before looking more into our roles here, the office versus the committee and the timeline, it's crucial to note that the members of our advisory boards are appointed by the governing board and they serve 3-year terms. This is something that's noted in the governance manual, and advisory board members are appointed as individuals based on their experiences, expertise, and perspectives, and they cannot serve more than one consecutive term. Now, I'm pointing this out because the really neat thing is Cradle to Career has gotten to the point where we're cycling on newer members. So we could have folks that have already served on our advisory boards that are wanting to come back to serve again. But it's really important for us to remember that the governance manual has rules set out for this, and we need a year chilling period before they can come back on and join us. The term for new appointees will be from 2025 to 2028. And one other stipulation that needs to be kept in mind is that individuals who work for an organization or a person represented on the governing board may not be selected to serve on the advisory board. Now, remember, there's 21 governing board folks representing a lot of different areas, and we don't want to see, we cannot see that same representation in our advisory boards. And again, this is something that's laid out in the governance manual. So the role of the committee. The slide in front of us highlights the respective role of the committee and what members will do during this process. As we can see, the committee is responsible for approving and providing input on the application, rubric, and selection process plan. That's all the work that we'll do here today. Committee members, you're responsible for reviewing and slating all applicants. That's something that we'll do prior to meeting 2. And I want to note that this task is what will be done individually, right? Reviewing those applications and that prioritization, that's something that y'all will do on your own. All other tasks you'll do collectively as a committee, and that will happen in these public meetings. At our next committee meeting, the committee will determine the final slate of applicants and approve the final slating of candidates and runners-up for each advisory board. And then these final candidates, that final list, they will be brought to the governing board for final approval, and that will happen in August. So the role of the office. Moving on to what it will look like for the office in this process. In preparation for today's public meeting, the office has provided the draft application, rubric, and selection process, again, that we will be talking about here today. After the application period closes, the office will provide slating resources, which include a scoring rubric, the application packet with all submitted applications, and a summary spreadsheet for member review, and finally, a Google form to prioritize those applicants. After the committee members complete their review and have slated all of the applicants, prioritized, the office will tabulate those results and provide a top scoring of applicants for the committee. And again, that's looking forward to meeting 2. No, fabulous, great, perfect. So what we have in front of us is a little calendar starting with April. And before I dig into what this calendar means, let's talk through our color-coded system. So purple means committee meetings, right? That should look very familiar. That's where we are here today. Orange is the application date. So if you're on the line, if you're a listener, thinking about wanting to be a part of our advisory boards, tomorrow is a really big day for you because that means that our application opens. Green is a committee member deadline. So members, the 3 of you, please pay attention to those green dates. Thank you in advance. Navy indicates a deadline for the office. And then blue is that governing board meeting. So, and if I said all of this too quickly, don't worry. There's a staff report that has all of this laid out for you in a neat little table. So fret not. Our initial committee meeting, as I just said, is today, April 28th. Members will review the current advisory board's composition, determine the desired characteristics and expertise, what we're looking for in the next round of recruitment, and then members will also have the opportunity to provide input and finalize the application, the rubric, and dissemination plans. The 2025, as I just mentioned, application advisory board process will begin tomorrow. So please go to the C2C website for interested members if you want to apply. That's what that big orange box means for tomorrow. Let's take a look at May. Fabulous. So the application period will close on Monday, May 19th. And I want to note there's a time associated with this, and it's 11:59 p.m. It's not 12, not 12:01. That would mean we get it in on the 20th, which means you're too late. So please get those applications in on May 19th. We thank you in advance. There's hopefully a wonderful pool of candidates that we're going to get in, and we're so appreciative of all your hard work that you're doing. This will mean that the public will have about 3 full weeks to apply. Folks will note that this deadline information is already live and posted on the application page, which is on the C2C website, and that's where you're going to submit your applications. Now, we have some folks, committee members that are return committee members. You may remember that there are letters of support sometimes that are turned in. Those letters of support are due in from the public on Tuesday, May 27th. Again, another orange box indicated on this slide by 11:59 p.m. We had a community conversation last week. It was wonderful. We had a fabulous showing of folks, super interested, very inquisitive minds. One thing that I shared with them there is you don't need a letter of support to apply. So in case you're somebody who's tuning in today and you didn't catch us last week, letters of support are awesome and they provide additive value to your application. It is not a requirement. But sometimes folks in your community want to talk about how wonderful you are. So those folks can feel free to get those letters in Tuesday, May 27th, 11:59 p.m. Okay, June. So committee members, this is where you're going to see, we're going to be tapping on you a lot. You will be provided the slating material no later than Friday, June 6th, so feel free to put a tickler on your calendar. All members must have their applications scored no later than June 16th. That's a really big day. Please ensure that you have the 16th marked on your calendar. If not, you'll be hearing from this gal. The office will then tabulate the scores from the member scoring result, that prioritization, and then provide the top scoring of applicants. And this will be done no later than June 20th. The committee will reconvene on June 27th. So if you're somebody that's submitting an application, you kind of are wondering what that process will be. Sometime between June 20th and the 27th, you'll see where that prioritization, how that's shaping up, what that is shaping up to look like. And again, publicly posted materials is where you can find this information. On the 27th, members will have the opportunity to discuss and deliberate the final slates of each advisory board, including rank ordering the runners up. And that's super duper important for the office to have that direction. Lastly, here at the August 15th governing board meeting, the governing board will consider the adoption of the committee recommended advisory board slating. The governing board is the final word. They will determine and review whether to approve that slate of candidates, and that includes the runner-up candidate positions. And it's important to remember that runner-up candidates are important to specify the order. Should an advisory board member not be able to serve, we're going to start tapping into those runners up. So that's why we need those rankings. Very clear. Thank you. This concludes my presentation, and I would love to pass it back to our committee chair.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, for your in-depth presentation and all that information. It was really helpful. Before I turn to member questions and comments, I want to take a moment to thank all of you for signing up to be part of this. I know it's a significant commitment, and we appreciate the time and effort you're putting in. Now I will open up for member questions and comments. Any comments, questions about the process, the role of the members?
Just,
the
do we know what the, because I was looking for it in the materials and it may not be set yet. Do we know what the time will be for the meeting on the June 27th?
Wonderful question. Let me take a look. Give me 1 second, please. Ideally 12 to 2.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Great. Thank you so much. We will now move on to agenda item 3, presentation of data and tools and community and engagement advisory board's demographic survey results. I would like to invite Shannon Serrato, Director of Engagement, to present this agenda item today. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Member Gonzalez Vasquez. So good morning, members. I'm Shannon Serrato, C2C's Director of Engagement, and today we'll be discussing the 2025 Advisory Board Demographic Survey. I would like to refer members up to the staff report that was created for this agenda item. And if you're a member of the public and would like to follow along, that staff report can be accessed on the C2C website. Next slide, please. So as written in statute, Cradle-to-Career's governing board is intended to reflect the cultural, racial, geographical, economic, and social diversity of California. And as you may know, in 2022, the office received a request seeking the demographic information of C2C's leadership. Following approval from the C2C governing board, the office facilitated the collection of governing board demographic information. That first year's results asked about race, ethnicity, and gender, as well as if board members would like to share more about their lived experiences in future iterations. All responses were self-reported and collected anonymously via survey, and that information was aggregated for the purposes of equity and transparency and posted to the Cradle-to-Career website. The office committed to conducting a demographic survey annually, and in 2023, both the Data and Tools and Community Engagement Advisory Boards agreed to expand the survey scope to include their responses. So this year, the 2024-2025 survey was issued to members on February 6th. The Data and Tools Advisory Board had a 94% response rate, down from 100% in 2023-24, with an 82% response rate from community engagement, down from 88% last year. We will post all aggregated responses from C2C's boards, governing, Data and Tools, and community engagement on the C2C site upon completion, but I'm glad to share results from this year's Advisory Board Demographic Survey with you all now. So, as a reminder, we asked members to self-report on race, ethnicity, and gender, and this year, 9 Data and Tools respondents identified as female or as women, 5 as male, and 1 as gender non-conforming. In terms of breakdown by race and ethnicity, 2 members identified as Asian or Asian American, 1 member identified as Black, 1 as Eastern European, 2 as Latinx or Mexican, with 9 members identifying as white or Caucasian, including white Jewish. I would again like to voice over that all responses are self-reported by Data and Tools Advisory Board members with no predetermined categories. So this year's responses do not include individuals who identified as multiracial, multi-ethnic, nor as Native American, Indigenous, with no members identifying as such, but that information is included in the full board's results for continuity over time. So moving on to the results of the Community Engagement Advisory Board, 9 respondents identified as female or women and 4 as male. In terms of breakdown by race and ethnicity, 3 members identified as Asian or Asian American, including Japanese American and Chinese Mexican. 1 member identified as African American, with 6 members identifying as Latino, Latina, including Latinx, Hispanic, and Indigenous Mexican, and 3 members identified as white. So this year's responses do not include individuals who identified as Middle Eastern, multiracial, multi-ethnic, nor as Native American or Indigenous, with no members identifying as such. But again, that information is included in the full board's results. The second part of the demographic survey gave members an opportunity to provide information about their lived experiences. And C2C's advisory boards are meant to serve as the voices of the public, representing the wide range of Californians that Cradle-to-Career is charged with serving, and we are grateful for their unique insights. So in 2024-25, over half of respondents from the Data and Tools Advisory Board identified as first-generation college students, and half also shared that they came from a low-income background. 3 advisory board members identified as immigrants, with 6 members identifying as bilingual. 3 respondents noted that they are living with a disability. 3 members note that they provide care for someone in their household, with 3 members stating that they didn't identify with any of the named categories. We also asked members to volunteer additional information about their lived experiences, and some members shared that they were children of refugees, while others noted that they came from a mixed immigration status household. Other members shared that they were children of teen parents or from a single parent household. For community engagement in 2024-25, the majority of respondents identified as a first-generation college student, which is also true for those who identified that they came from a low-income background. 3 advisory board members identified as immigrants, with 7 members identifying as bilingual. 3 community engagement members note that they provide care for someone in their household, with 2 members stating that they didn't identify with any of the named categories. And in terms of additional information about lived experiences, some members shared that they were from a migrant family, while others identified as a father, son, husband, and student. So we hope this information is helpful in advance of this year's selection process. And I want to share that advisory board members also opted to share additional professional information, such as their position, type of job, or area of expertise to provide a fuller picture of the boards, which is also included in the staff report. So with that, that ends my presentation on the advisory board demographics, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have on this year's survey. I'll hand it back to member Gonzalez Vasquez. Apologies.
Great, thank you so much, Sharon Serrato, for your information. And I see that member Sullivan raised their hand, so if you can ask your question.
I did, and then I believe the question was answered for me. Appreciate the data. The reporting on the last couple of slides, to understand correctly, an advisory board member could select multiple of those categories, correct? Or did
All of that information was provided by them.
by them?
So,
yes, got it.
So that is just a blank field that somebody fills in as much as they see fit.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, I don't hear any, so I'll go ahead and move on to agenda item. Oops, apologies about that. Move on to agenda item 4, discussion, public comment, and possible action on the Data Tools Advisory Board member application rubric and selection process. I would like to invite Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, to present this agenda item today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Happy to kick us off here again. We're going to go through 2 parts. Obviously, data and tools and community engagement. We'll begin with data and tools. So again, for folks following along, please feel free to check out that staff report. Earlier today, I provided an overview of each advisory board and the selection process for the new advisory board members. And then, as I just noted, there are 2 advisory boards. So let's dig into data and tools right now. As we get started, I wanted to remind members that we will be asking you for your input in the following areas. So the first one is the selection plan, which consists of outreach and member selection. Shannon Serrato, my colleague, will be walking us through that after this. The next area is the application, as well as the rubric. And then a separate side note is we'll also be talking through ideal candidate populations. At the end of this agenda item, members will vote and then ideally approve these resources. So as I just mentioned, we'll begin the conversation with the outreach plan, and I would love to pass it over to Shannon Serrato. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate. All right, so I'm now going to share information about our outreach plan for the recruitment of members to C2C's advisory boards. And I should note that while this agenda item is specific to this board, the plan is applicable to both advisory boards. So as I first shared before, the goal is to ensure the Cradle-to-Career's boards reflect California's diverse communities. And for our recruitment, we prioritize regional outreach, targeted engagement with key groups, and accessible communications materials. So in terms of regional and direct outreach, C2C has already begun its regional outreach targeting the North State, Central Valley, and Eastern Sierra regions. We have reached out to tribal communities, community-based organizations and foundations, student-led organizations on college campuses, and local education offices, particularly in rural and underrepresented regions. We've also sent copies of our printed flyers, which are available in both English and Spanish, to these partners so that they can amplify the application window. In addition to regional outreach, we've connected with local groups, state entities, and student organizations within the Sacramento region. C2C has table in spaces like Sac City College and is exploring more events to attend. And we've connected with the 3 public higher education segment student associations for amplification of the applications and materials when they go live starting tomorrow. And in terms of digital engagement, digital media, we've been utilizing digital media to provide resources and extend our reach. We've provided digital resources for partners to use, such as the application landing page on the C2C website, which houses resources and key dates. We are launching a social media campaign to promote the application period. And a key component of the social media strategy includes a media toolkit for partners to use. And that toolkit includes graphics, draft captions, and email copy that they can take with them and distribute to their communities. And I would also note, as Mary Kate said earlier, we hosted a virtual community conversation just last week on April 24th to provide an overview of the application process and answer questions from interested applicants. And again, that was a rich and definitely engaged discussion. So with that, that's our overview of the outreach plan, and I'll hand it back to Mary Kate. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So Data and Tools Advisory Board, it consists of 16 folks. Those members look like representatives from advocacy organizations, community organizations, end users of the data system, such as practitioners and researchers. As you can see, there's a total of 6 vacancies that we'll be experiencing this year. 3 practitioners and 3 folks from researcher organizations. So given their departure and the pending new selection of members, Data and Tools Advisory Board will be composed of 2 members that represent advocacy organizations, 2 members that represent community organizations, 5 practitioners, and 1 researcher organization. So you could see the breakdown, and also if you're a curious mind kind of anticipating what future state will look like, you can see the folks that will be terming out next year and the year after. All right, the next slide, thank you, has a vacancy analysis. So maybe you're more visual. Hopefully this can help you. The slide here visually depicts the impacts of the vacancy analysis with 2 charts, the 2025 board composition, as well as the term out analysis. So we'll just give you a second to take that in. Also, for folks following along with the materials, as well as our committee members, there's helpful charts, the same charts that are found in attachment C of your staff report. So as members consider the ideal populations for appointment and the prioritization of future candidate categories for advisory board members, we ask that you utilize attachment D in the staff report. That has member bios, term dates, and it's a more holistic view of data and tools, what it currently looks like, and then where we're going to be experiencing those holes. There's currently, if this is helpful to voice over, there are currently no student members on the Data and Tools Advisory Board. Members may also note that other populations that are not currently represented, may include adult education and individuals representing Northern California, north of Sacramento and the Central Valley. Another small note is that the staff note talks about when the Data and Tools Advisory Board last met, which was in March, they offered some suggestions related to what they would hope potential populations for appointment and prioritization will look like. I do want to remind the committee that this is, your authority. Offerings from Data and Tools Advisory Board members are simply that, they're suggestions. But ultimately, it's your authority and expertise that we're leaning on here to decide what we prioritize. Looking at the application, thank you for advancing this slide. This year's Data and Tools Advisory Board application consists of 15 questions. Questions 1 through 10 are standard. Questions 11 through 15 are more substantive. So in front of members today is the redlined application with suggested edits. Please note that this is attachment A of the staff report. And I'd be happy to take this opportunity to talk through that redline application. So what we're going to have up in front of us soon is that draft application. And we can I'll voice over some of that information. Perfect. Could we make it a little bit bigger? Is there any way to do that? Looking good. Fabulous. Great. Hopefully that's super helpful. Nice and big. So the black text is, we could keep scrolling. Wonderful. You're getting close, but still a little bit. Perfect. And we're there. Okay, so the black text was text that was approved by the committee last year. And my focus right now is going to be on those redlined additions. And we can see some of that highlighted in front of us on the screen. We'll find this in the selection criteria area, membership and terms, meetings, member expectations and responsibilities, and the application questions. So selection criteria, which is already up in front of us. What was done here is the inclusion of this section is really to enhance the clarity and transparency regarding applicants' eligibility for appointment to the advisory board. So again, we want the folks that are applying to really understand if they're eligible, because there's so much work that goes into this process. We just want to ensure that that's spotlighted at the front. Looking toward membership and terms, which is the next section. Wonderful. What was done here is we wanted to be consistent with the language in the governance manual. So committee members, you'll recall that you applied that new governance, the edits of the governance manual on February 28th. The edits are noted in two sections, and they were voiced over in agenda item 2. So there we go. In terms of meetings, that's the next section. These are the revised dates for 25 and 26. Obviously, the committee couldn't have approved those last year. Why we make such an important note of having this is because we want any new there's the expectation that all advisory board meeting members attend all meetings. So we want to be upfront and transparent with, again, what that expectation is. And 2, provide them these dates well in advance so that they can make every meeting. Okay, so next we're looking at member expectations and responsibilities. Again, this is to be consistent with the advisory board recommendation process that's outlined in the governance manual, those changes that we saw on February 28. Now let's take a look at the actual application itself, starting on question 1. So this question is important for 2 reasons. So 1, all members must be California residents and over 18. So this is something that the committee dealt with last year, was the addition of the California resident. It's defined by code, and so that's there for folks. And in terms of over 18, this is again something that the committee looked at last year. We want this to be very clear, again, just to be thoughtful of applicants. We want them to be eligible in order to apply. In terms of the over 18, last year it was made clear by the committee that we would need more staff support in order to support minor applicants and have them be fully engaged with the process. But again, due to those staffing constraints, we're limited to only asking folks that are 18 years and older to apply. In case that's a helpful reminder. Question 9. Okay, so in previous years, applicants could self-identify, which they still can, by selecting different categories. Previously, they could select multiple, but this year we really wanted to have them prioritize and take a look and thought at this. So there are 4 areas and 4 distinct categories related to work contributions. So you'll notice that the first section is practitioner, and then it's broken down in terms of different types of practitioner. Can we scroll down a little bit more? The other options relate to, oh, yes, these are the other options. Research organization, advocacy organization, community organization, or other. So they can choose one of those boxes. This part is really important. I'll voice it over in a second as to why. I'll kind of thread that needle. We also have information on here related to their status as a student. Again, kind of just making this a little bit more clear than we did last year for the applicant on the receiving end. I want to remind the committee that last year, what we had defined a student as is somebody that's in their undergraduate journey. If somebody is in graduate or other, it's not that that wouldn't be noted, just it's a secondary category versus a primary. And then you'll also see on here, folks can share with us if, they're a parent or, some other way in which they identify with the data system. They have a family member that they can disclose all that. Okay. Since we anticipate that this application could take 10 to 20 hours to complete very easily because there's information that they're going to have to fill out after this, open-ended questions. I really would like to remind members that we'd ask you to delete or simplify versus adding more questions onto the application since it's already so heavy. So just planting that thought. And then if we could go back to the slide deck, I want to talk about self-identification a little bit more. Perfect. That's exactly where I'd like to land. So this is a part of the application process that I just want to voice over and make clear to members. So we just walked it through. You could see it visually how it relates to the application. When applicants fill out the form, they're going to self-identify on question 9. We just saw this. The first round of options are related to professional expertise, and folks may only choose one. That's what we just saw. You can see that those options are on the left-hand side of the slide. Additionally, applicants may also disclose if they're a student, family member, and then their regional focus. Apologies that I didn't voice this over. So those are other ways that they can self-disclose. Now, this piece is really, really important because when the office prepares those slating materials for member prioritization, applicants will be grouped into these categories that the applicant has self-selected. So when you get the applicants, you'll notice that they'll be grouped by practitioner, research organization, advocacy, community. So we want applicants to be very clear about what their selection is because it's not the role of the office to make that determination for them. So this is a really tall task for members today. What I'd also invite us to do is to talk about and identify any ideal populations for appointment. Remember, we're going to face 6 vacancies. So there's going to be a hole on the advisory board. But I'd like us to discuss who you all feel like, if you could wave your magic wand, what type of applicants you would see, what those populations would look like. And then when we come back in June, we're going to actually vote on the applications received. So today it's an ideal world, blue sky. In June, it's more, this was the application pool, and now we can make decisions. So today's conversation, again, centered on those 6 vacancies. And I would love the direction of these 6 seats. We'd like to prioritize 1 seat for this, 2 seats for that, et cetera, et cetera. Our chair will lead us through that discussion, but just to kind of ground the conversation a little bit. If it's worth noting, last year, the office defined and the committee agreed, I've already voiced this over, but saying this again, student as those folks that are in undergraduate status. Individuals who are identified as graduate students were categorized primarily based upon their work contributions, but it was also their student status was recorded as a secondary demographic. So it wasn't lost or hidden, it was just there as a secondary demographic. This year, the office will maintain the same approach to ensure consistency and accurately representing individuals and their primary contributions. My last thought here is sharing that other lessons learned from previous years is when members go to prioritize, we ask that you prioritize with the directions given and then have that priority in mind. Try not to create your own slating. This is why today's discussion is so important. Also, come June, we should have at least 2 runners up for each category. And lastly, this is really important. We completely understand how hard this work is. We're so immensely grateful for all your hard work. And just remember, as we talk today, there's no perfect system or combination, right? We're going to do our best, have this open dialogue, and we really appreciate you, coming to the table in the coming months and showing up as a governing board member. Okay, quick thought next is the rubric. Members, you'll remember you're going to be looking at applicants, you're going to be reviewing their information, and this rubric is going to be your helpful tool for that scoring. So this is our time to kind of talk through it. The previous committee had approved this rubric. It, again, works in conjunction with the application. It highlights the 4 main areas of criteria for selection: community affiliation, data sets, data alignment, and actionable experience. We have it broken down into a point system. And this is super what you'll need, your tool, to utilize when creating that prioritization in June. So I'm going to leave you all with a motion. As a reminder to members, the proposed motion for this agenda item is to move to approve the application rubric selection process plan as presented. But before we even get to the motion, there's lots to discuss, and there's some central questions for a member to guide you through your deliberation. So we're going to leave it on that slide, which is the next slide, that has those fantastic questions. And I would love to hand it back to our chair now to lead us through that. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you so much, Mary Kate Cruz-Jones and Shannon Serrato, for your presentations. I would like to allow some time for ample deliberation and ideation. I know there was a lot that was covered. Before I do, I would like to deliberate about the scope of what is being discussed today. So one is the outreach plan. Second is the ideal population for appointment prioritization of future candidates, categories for each advisory board, as Mary Kate just shared. 3 is focus on the red line application and any additional additions, deletions, or corrections to the application. And 4 is the rubric. So let's start with the first one, the outreach plan. Members, any additions, deletions, corrections, or modifications? Member Sullivan?
I just want to say none from me. I think I understand how difficult outreach can often be. It sounds like it's a very comprehensive plan, and I am looking forward to, as a committee member, taking some of the tools off the web page that have been created and like sharing them on my LinkedIn page or within my own organization. And I would just encourage, I'm sure Thomas at AICCU, he has some opportunities to do that as well. It looks as comprehensive as I can imagine you could make it at this point.
Yeah, I'd just echo Erin's comments. Well, first, thank you all for your work on this. It's, like Erin said, right, the outreach is always so difficult for any organization. But I mean, it's really incumbent not just on the folks here, but on the entire governing board to help with this outreach as well. So I think just reiterating that with the other governing board members, and reaching out to our network of folks, and it may overlap, but I think in this case, overlapping is good because it reinforces.
Thank you so much, Member Vu. Definitely agree. It's really comprehensive and really thoughtful. So really appreciate the office's thoughtfulness and work on this. Any other comments about the outreach plan?
I'm just thinking, the only thing I'm thinking about, well, and
Members
I
of
just
the-
don't know what you could do. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the lack of student members and recruitment for that, although as an individual who works for a commission that has a student liaison, we always have difficulty reaching those students as well. And I mean, we work directly with institutions of higher education, and we still sometimes have difficulty. So I'm just thinking out loud. I don't have any additional suggestions. That's a hard one.
Yeah, there are definitely like student groups,
Mhm.
for the UC, CSU's, community colleges, less so for the independent colleges, but they are out there and it's just, yeah, it's and no, they are active, but especially during the summer though, it's a bit difficult to reach out to them. And I know like, for the semester, colleges and universities were getting to the end of the school year. And for the quarter system ones, they go through the early part of June. So there's still some opportunity there, but yeah.
You make a good point. And for those that are on the semester system right now, their students are very focused on some other activities. So asking them also to spend, I think Mary Kate said 10 to 20 hours on an application. I don't think there's anything that can be done for it this year. Perhaps opening up the application process a little earlier in future years could be helpful in capturing some of those students, because this is a difficult time of year, I think, to ask them to be looking to other things. But that's just future thinking. Yeah. With regard to the makeup of these boards, is there and if you mentioned this, I apologize, is there a statutory requirement that each board have a certain number of individuals represented? I see Mary Kate shaking her head. Okay.
Yeah, no, there is not.
Okay.
This was a helpful flag to interject here. This was a helpful flag in terms of thinking through the timeline related to students. And it would impact, just voicing this over, it would impact the governing board in that we would have to move the charter to earlier in the year to
Mhm.
convene this committee earlier because the committee approves the application. So the application couldn't go live, which is why the sequencing,
Of course. Yeah,
just voicing that over. So thanks for that flag.
of course.
Those are really great comments. And I do think it's really important what Member Vu mentioned about reaching out to some of the student orgs. We know that students are very busy and they may already have some summer plans, but that would be really important for us to do maybe additional outreach to student organizations at the university and colleges as well.
Yes, I just want to reiterate, I did mention that. And so I know my colleagues, Angelique and Cynthia in particular, have reached out to CSSA, UCSA, and the longer community college, but there's too many S's. I'm gonna get it wrong. But that was already a part of the plan. Heard about timeline, acknowledging that, to Mary Kate's point, this would be a shift, but we did try to reach out earlier in the year. We've provided actual printed flyers to folks to put up in the spaces, acknowledging the application is not live, and to this point they would still have to do it while they're doing their finals and all the things. But we did try to amplify this earlier on, so if there's like a I'm so excited about this, that was made clear earlier before their heads down trying to graduate or whatever they're trying to do, but heard about timeline.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for lifting that up. Really appreciate your efforts. And we know students are busy, so really appreciate you reaching out and sharing that. Great. Okay, so why don't we move on to the next task is to identify the ideal population for appointment and prioritization for the future As Mary Kate mentioned, we have 6 vacancies, 3 practitioners and 3 members from research organizations. I'm going to open it up for comments. Member Sullivan?
Yeah, I just want to note, and I'm trying to find so that I don't misspeak the slide. I've got it right here. That the current makeup, if you consider the vacancies not vacant, if that makes sense, is very heavy on the research and practitioner. And this is, I think, was noted when we were reminded that there are currently no student members. Even community members, there's only 2. So yeah, I think it's at least so far clear that I would love to see more student members, but we'll have to see what applications we get in. That's really my only comment. I'm not sure in terms of this conversation, what more can be done. Again, because as I clarified with Mary Kate, there's no statutory requirement that we have, 6 practitioners and 3 community members. And so it's really up to the applications that are received and the viability of any of those applications. But from a standpoint of somebody who will be reviewing the applications, I'll be very interested, I think, in seeing if we can get a few student members. I think that would be really helpful.
Right. Thank you, Member Sullivan. Mary Kate?
Sure. If helpful to also say this in a different way, last year, what the committee brought that was super helpful was they shared that they wanted to see more like workforce expertise on the Data and Tools Committee. So Member Sullivan's point is completely right in that we don't know who will apply or what we'll get, but is there any sort of expertise that y'all would like to see uplifted on Data and Tools? Or if we could kind of tease out and talk through some of those pockets of individuals, that would be even just super helpful to hear.
The only thing in reviewing these materials prior to the meeting that struck me, and it may have been as part of a conversation about other goals for the board, are representation from the apprenticeship area there's a lot going on around apprenticeships in education, both in early childhood, because it looks a little different in early childhood education, and in K-12, in preparing these individuals. And I think that with all of the efforts there are behind that, a little more representation but from the apprenticeship community would be good, as well as from any pathways focused on career advancement, I guess is for lack of a better word. So apprenticeship is a piece of that, but there are other groups that are also very focused on capturing students, maybe at a K-12 level, that are going to be going into more career focused as opposed to, just fully higher ed focused. So career pathways, that's what I was looking for. Apprenticeships and career pathways. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you, Member Sullivan. Definitely agree. Those are really important. Member Vu?
Yeah, so Data and Tools has been around, well, both committees, I guess, have been around for, a handful of years now. I guess, it has the need of the type of expertise changed over the years. As the C2C system is a bit more established now. We have, the data visualization stuff up now. Has that changed what this data, what the type of need is necessary for Data and Tools? Then that would change kind of, who we need and what expertise we need on the board or on the advisory board. Just a thought in this.
That's a really great question, Member Vu. I'll defer to Mary Kate and maybe other folks to maybe answer that question now that the dashboard is up. Congratulations on that. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about the needs or expertise.
Yeah, I know that in this past year or that we're still in, labor workforce data has been a really big topic. And so the prioritization of those folks last year was really helpful in executing that vision. Looking forward and new to our next leg of things, I think that that's something that I'd be happy to come back to the committee with more information on. There's not something at the top of mind that immediately strikes me. Shannon, is there something that you could think of that I'm blanking
No,
on?
so when we discussed this with the advisory boards recently, labor and workforce did come up as an opportunity for more folks to join the advisory boards. I will say that our current data and tools members are well versed in data linkage, data visualizations. That is their bread and butter. So they have been super helpful for that. And acknowledging that we do have a liaison on the governing board specific to that need as well. And so I think that there's a lot of appetite, but also a lot of depth on the bench currently. I would say that what we heard specifically was that additional folks focused on workforce development and those things, they had a need for that, or they had an appetite for adding more folks. So that's just anecdotally what we've heard. But to Mary Kate's point, we can follow up with more information.
Thank you for that. I know there were other considerations too that folks mentioned, and it was in the staff report. The also representation from Northern California in the Central Valley, as well as adult education. And I'm bringing that up so that we can deliberate. Any comments from board members?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as somebody who lives I'm not as far north as some, I think, of what we're thinking, right? When we're thinking about like the Shasta counties and the Siskiyou counties. And then thinking about the overlap between what I had started with was some more student representation. Getting students from those areas down to Sacramento for meetings is a hurdle, right? It's difficult. So I'm not offering a solution, but I am offering, I suppose, an understanding and some sympathy about trying to capture people from those areas. It can be difficult. It can be very difficult.
Definitely agree. And for those reasons, I think it would be really important for us to, if someone applies from those areas, to prioritize maybe selecting folks from both Northern California and or the Central Valley.
Because I believe I read they're required 2 in-person meetings and 1 virtual. Is that correct?
That is, that's what we've done this year.
Okay.
But future state, there's no statutory requirement mandating that it has to be an in-person meeting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know.
And are they Bagley-Keene meetings for these advisory boards?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm hearing prioritization of students and also what Member Sullivan called apprenticeship career pathways or workforce related, Northern California and Central Valley representation. Anything else that we would like to prioritize?
There was a mention about a gap in adult education, and I just would be curious to hear a little bit more about that from staff.
Great question.
In terms of the need. So, I mean, you're noting that it's not there. What is the need that's lacking, with the utmost respect to my colleagues in adult ed?
Yeah, that was something, and other folks from the team can help refresh my memory. I believe that this came out of last year's advisory board meeting. It was something that was identified by one of our advisory board members, noting that there wasn't much representation in that area, and
Okay.
something that I think was considered by the committee. Again, folks on my team, Stephanie, I can look to you. I don't recall if we got any applicants. And please feel free to chime in if there's more that you remember to help paint this picture.
Yeah, happy to clarify that, Member Sullivan. Hi, Stephanie Gutierrez Valdez, Board Liaison and Governance Specialist. For those of you joining the call, I'm a part of Mary Kate Cruz's Jones team. In terms of how we define adult education, we're looking more under the purview of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which defines adult education specifically to individuals pursuing adult education, like the adult schools, GED, and those specific career certificates. And when we did the needs analysis, we determined that there was not necessarily any individuals that are experts in that respective field. However, it is at the discretion of the committee should you wish to prioritize an individual from the adult education sphere. Hopefully that answers your question.
It absolutely does. And given that that's the particular sector, because of course, adult education in California is kind of a bifurcated system. We have some of these more career pathways focused sometimes that are offered at like K-12 schools. And then we have a whole sector that's offered through the community colleges as well. And I think that based on if we're talking specifically about folks with some expertise around WIOA, et cetera, we might get at that through the focus on career pathways. So it sounds to me like it's related still to, kind of the career pathways focus. So it might be captured there. It might be an idea to think, okay, career pathways as a focus, specifically anybody with that area in adult ed or, some expertise around WIOA, that kind of thing. So we could capture it there as a little chunk.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, just to recap, in terms of prioritization, we're prioritizing students, folks in career pathways, adult ed, folks that are familiar with WIO or workforce related practitioners, Northern California or Central Valley. Any other recommendations for prioritization before we move on to the application? Okay, great. So now we'll move on to the application. And is there any additional comments, questions about the application regarding the redlined items that Mary Kate reviewed? Member Sullivan?
Hi, it's me again. I had a question about get to the staff report and the application. It was one of the criteria. It was if you select practitioner, please indicate. So it was an additional, oh, I'm almost there. No, I'm not almost there. Can somebody remind me where that is?
Yeah, the practitioner, that's question 9.
Right. And I was wondering if, not to add to it, because I'm very cognizant of that reminder, we don't want to make this overly broad. But I was wondering if the additional subcategories that are offered there for practitioner wouldn't be of interest in general for that question. Just meaning would we be interested to know if somebody from a research organization had a focus on early learning or adult education? Or would we be interested to know if somebody from a community organization had a particular focus on undocumented student? Do you know what I mean? So it's a great subset of, to get a little bit more focused, just wondering if that subset really is applicable at the end of the overall question. So regardless of what you check, can you tell us what your focus is?
I think that's a great suggestion. So instead of having it as a subset of practitioner, it would be asked at the end after they self-identified.
Which could become an additive question, I guess. I just want to acknowledge that. It could be, you know, based on your answer above, so it could become a question B. So it's, again, I could be making additive, and I apologize for that. But I do think it would be interesting, especially if you're at a research organization that has a lot of, like, I think we have somebody currently terminating out from PACE. And PACE has a lot of areas of focus sometimes. And so asking this particular person, what is your specific area of research, could be helpful.
Okay.
And then going up to page, I think just the page right above that, where we added in that big section on, no, it's a little higher up. It's getting at the, if you're selected, you can't be a representative. It is the selection criteria at the bottom of page 1. Based on what Mary Kate's explanation of this, it made sense. But when I read this initially, a number of times, I couldn't be clear what the language was getting at. And I don't know that it explains quite, it explains the issue quite in the same way that Mary Kate explained it verbally. I found myself reading it circularly and not being able to really untangle. An organization is defined as a state agency or representative of a segment. So an organization is defined as the representative of a segment, such as AICCU, as opposed to a provider that report to an agency. So a representative of UC, that sentence doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if I'm the only one too on the committee here. I'm fine letting it go, but I circled that sentence the number of times. I'm like, this, it isn't reading. It just didn't make sense to me. And I don't know that it will then. I guess the only reason I ask is I don't know that it will then make sense to someone from the public. Also, though, I don't have a recommendation for how to fix it because as I read it, I wasn't sure what it was trying to explain.
I'll defer to Mary Kate.
Yeah, sorry, I am trying to get to where you are. Apologies, give me a second.
That's okay.
And I suppose my initial question, and if I could have Stephanie again chime in here, is this a direct quotation from the governance manual? Because if it is taken directly from the governance manual, that's the first starting question.
Yes, correct. So that language is taken from the governance manual selection criteria section. The additional sentence that we added as an office is that last sentence, which links to the governing board member bio section on the website.
Okay. Understood. Well, then I just withdraw my question, my concern, because I understand if it's part of the adopted governance manual, which I see that at the very beginning of the, right at the very beginning, so apologies for that. Then yeah, it isn't something worth wordsmithing at this time. If I'm around the next time we open the governance manual, maybe I'll dive into that sense a little bit more, but understood, it's an adopted piece of language, so I will, I'll leave that question alone. And I have no other questions then about the application packet.
Right. Thank you so much, Member Sullivan. Go ahead, Mary Kate.
And I was just gonna say thank you. Yes, in that it is a quotation. But I think what you're raising is the clarity of language is something that's really important. And I think that this is a wonderful highlight for us, and a future opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll move on to the last item, the rubric. I found it super helpful in deliberating last year, so I wanted to open up for any comments, corrections, modifications to the rubric, scoring rubric. I don't hear anything. Do folks need a little bit more time? Go ahead.
I did
Dr.
have
Sullivan?
something. Yeah, I just have a question. I was just trying not to be the first one out of the gate every time.
No, we appreciate your comment.
Is there any initial level of review by staff before these come to us? So like, is there a set of, minimum expectations for each application packet that will be sorted out? And the reason I ask that is because on community affiliation, we're giving somebody 1 point for not describing what their affiliation even is. And it seems like, how can we even move to score something if they don't even tell us that minimum? That almost seems like it's not a non-response if there's no description of the affiliation.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Happy to interject here. So we don't, the office does not. All the applications that we get, we pass along to the committee, and the committee, scores. Mhm.
Member Sullivan, are you suggesting that we don't provide any points for someone that doesn't state if they have any community affiliation?
Yes, or just that it be so in data sets, at least. So for community affiliation, data alignment, and actionable experience, we're giving a point for no experience, no description. But with data sets, we're giving them a point by saying they have very little, but they at least went somewhere in demonstrating that they have some relevant experience or a little familiarity. So I guess I feel like if there's nothing, I would not typically provide a point for a lack of data, a lack of information. So I suppose what I might be recommending is that it just says maybe minimal description of affiliation or minimal experience or little experience with data cleaning, kind of the way that we do it with data sets. It made sense to give a point for there at least being something there, but when there's nothing there at all, I'm not inclined to provide points for that.
So helpful, apologies chiming in. So instead of so everybody's on the same page, attachment B, 1 point column, community affiliation, data alignment, actionable experience, striking that no, replacing it with little in those 3 boxes.
That would be a suggestion, yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I'm a odd stickler for continuity of language in things, just because I think it makes it clearer to the public, but also to reviewers, as somebody who is both a reviewer and I guide reviewers. It just sort of carries across all of the areas. So when you go over, let's say, to 5 points, we use the word significant experience for both data sets and data alignment. Then we switch to extensive experience and actionable experience. And then community affiliation, we just say demonstrated affiliation instead of significant affiliation or extensive, I would say on affiliation, extensive affiliation with groups or communities. I might only suggest in that particular case that demonstrated, maybe we add demonstrated extensive experience instead of demonstrated affiliation.
So
Demonstrate,
for community affiliation, you're suggesting adding demonstrated extensive affiliation with groups.
currently unrepresented. I understand the difference between 3 points and 5 points on that one.
Mhm.
Do you know what? I don't want to wordsmith in the moment and drag this out. I think it's clear. So I'm going to leave my request for change on this just to that 1 point rubric column.
Okay. So striking that, go ahead, Mary. Yeah.
So if I could just interject so that we're all on the same page in terms of as we're, and not saying that we're wrapping up, but in terms of looking toward the motion and next steps, I've heard 2 asks for, or I guess let me say, the outreach plan. I've heard a future opportunity, so no need for change at this time. So I'm hearing the outreach plan approved. In terms of the application, the one that we can take is moving those subset of practitioners after all workforce questions and having it be applicable to the major components. And then in the 1 point box, striking the no and adding little. I heard those as the 2 corrections, one for the rubric, one for the application. No changes to the outreach plan as we think toward a motion. Have I correctly captured that from the committee?
Yes.
So I'm going to be looking toward our general counsel to guide us through this. A motion may look something like what was just stated or something, if we're thinking toward a motion.
I think for the clarity of the minutes, it's really important to actually specify the changes, because otherwise when we go back to the minutes and we just say as discussed by the committee, that's not as helpful. I know sometimes there are such significant changes that we do that because writing them out is challenging. If there is a way that we can try, like, I know I can capture the change in column 1 of the rubric. That other one, I'm wondering if someone on the team can try to write it out for me in Slack, and I'm going to try to craft the motion in Slack for us to share publicly.
Yes. Perfect. So then would it make sense as we're doing that to table this motion, Julia Blair, and then to continue on with the meeting looking at the time that it's 11:18?
I should be able to have the motion done in 5 minutes. So if we want to move to the next item, as long as we get those changes written, but are we completely done discussing any potential changes? I just want to make sure we haven't prematurely stopped
Apologies.
discussion.
Yes, apologies. Please, Chair.
Yes, definitely. We've discussed all the items, the outreach plan, the ideal population. We went over this survey and the application, sorry, and the rubric. Okay, so should I go ahead, Mary Kay?
Yeah, so I think with that, what we do is let's pause on a motion, public comment, and the vote. We can come back to this. What we can do is move on to community engagement if that feels comfortable for folks. So agenda item 5.
Perfect. All right, so we're gonna go through this now for the Community Engagement Advisory Board. So we're gonna move on to agenda number 5, discussion, public comment, and possible action on the Community Engagement Advisory Board member application, rubric, and selection process. I would like to invite Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, and Shannon Serrato, Director of Engagement, to present this agenda item today.
Hiya, back again. Thank you. So this is pretty similar to things that we have already discussed, so I will be very, very brief. Again, we just took a look at data and tools, that rubric application, and that selection plan, and we're going to do it again here, starting with that selection plan. So Shannon Serrato, please kick us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary Kate. So good morning again, members. As I mentioned earlier, the outreach plan presented just a while ago was an overview of recruitment for both advisory boards, as there are some similarities and vacancies for both. So the outreach plan that we've been implementing and you will all vote on today to recruit new members for the Community Engagement Advisory Board is similar to data and tools because we're implementing one overarching plan for both boards. So to reiterate the plan, we're prioritizing regional outreach, targeted engagement with key groups, and providing accessible resources for our stakeholders in the form of translated materials. And just wanted to uplift again that we are doing outreach into the areas specified today. So I'm glad that we are all in alignment with that, and really just appreciate you uplifting the need to reach out to student groups. So just wanted to amplify that. And then due to the nature of the communications plan, it was crucial for us to begin outreach. So just want to say that as well. While y'all are voting on this today, a large portion of that plan has already been implemented to ensure that we get in front of folks as early as possible, as stated, especially for students. So as you know, collaboration across these stakeholders takes time, and sending out the physical flyers, all of the things that we've done, identifying, tabling events, partnering with groups takes a lot of planning and coordination. So we just appreciate your flexibility and understanding as we've already engaged some of that process. I just want to give a shout out again to my colleague Angelique, Cynthia, Lopez Montes, the communications team. They have done a significant, extensive outreach plan or job so far. I will say that this group, because I do have a little bit more time to talk about this, they've reached out to 40 different offices across the state of California. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get a good batch of applicants, but want to uplift that work already being done because I may have talked about in bullet points, but there has been a significant amount of work being done. Brittany Ortiz, who no longer is at C2C, also did a ton of outreach there. And so we are hopeful that we will get a good batch of applicants this year. So just to be clear, while we appreciate all of your thoughts and certainly glad for more in this iteration, a lot of that work has already been set into motion. And then want to confirm that we've received interest from the groups that we've reached out to, particularly for student groups. So thank you to Anjali for dropping that in, because I think that's just a confirmation. We will see what comes out on the other side, but we have heard from those folks that they are interested and engaged, and will be amplifying the material. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Mary Kate, and glad to discuss this further.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's take a look at community engagement membership. So this is a snapshot in front of us. Again, we have 16 folks on this advisory board, including advocacy organization staff, community organization staff, and users of the system, practitioners, students. As we can see here, there's a total of 6 vacancies, so 6 on either advisory board. Folks that will be falling off this year currently represent 2 folks from advocacy organizations, 1 community organization, and 3 practitioners. Given their departure and pending the new selection of members, the Community Engagement Advisory Board will be composed of 3 folks that represent advocacy organizations and 3 folks that represent community organizations, 2 practitioners, and 2 students. So we do have that student voice represented here. On the next slide, we have that visual analysis. Again, one depicting the 2025 board composition, and the other one looking at the member term out analysis. Again, for folks following along, attachment C of the staff report has these 2 charts. And on attachment D, it provides the member bios, term dates, and again, that holistic view of what the Community Engagement Advisory Board looks like. I do want to highlight that currently there's no tribal representation on community engagement. as well as other populations that are not currently represented that may include, and members of the committee, you may have your own thoughts. Representation of Northern California, north of Sacramento, adult education, or a person from a California state university. Also worth noting, community engagement folks, we did ask them for their thoughts, and that's included in the staff report. So we have taken a look at the application, just to kind of voice over. It's very similar. Community engagement has 14 questions. 1 through 10 are standard, 11 through 14 substantive. You have the red line version of the application in front of you. It's very, very similar edits. If folks would like, I can walk through those, but we've really gone through a lot of that and we did that deep dive. I would venture to guess that we'd want to carry over those edits that we saw, but you know, again, up to the committee. Happy to voice those over. Also happy to pause here. Related to self-identification, just, you know, it's the same thoughts here that I have already shared. Really important that we want to give the applicant the opportunity to self-identify, and then would be hoping for your thoughts in terms of what that prioritization would look like. In terms of the rubric, sorry, if we could advance a few slides here. One more, please. Fabulous. The rubric obviously looks a little bit different. We're scoring a different population of candidates. What the previous committee has highlighted as the 4 main areas for selection: community affiliation, community ambassador or actionable experience, soliciting input and communicating need and concerns, and then lastly, student and educator tools. So those are, I did a very, very quick, but I feel like it's been thorough in the DTAB presentation. So the motion in front of folks is similar to what we've seen and found on the next slide. And that looks like moving to approve the application rubric and selection process plan as presented. And then the subsequent slide goes over the member deliberation and ideation. Chair, quick thought. I believe that we have a potential motion in the works. So what we could do, if we'd like, we can talk through community engagement, get that done, and then move back to the DTAB motion. Or if you want to, I defer to you.
Yeah, why don't we do that? I like that suggestion. Great. So opening it up again for deliberation. Were any additional changes to what was shared about the outreach plan? Ideal population prioritization. I know that this is different, so I want to spend some time talking about that. We did hear from Mary Kate that there is no representation from tribal communities as well as CSU. So wanted to lift that up for deliberation. Comments, suggestions? Member Sullivan?
Yeah, I just really appreciate that. I think it absolutely should be a priority for us to try to get somebody from the CSU and certainly from the tribal communities. But going back to, yeah, certainly from the tribal communities. It's hard. I'm listening for things during the data and outreach and then trying to apply them later when we have this conversation. So I need to be reminded, knowing that there is a gap, for instance, in tribal communities. Was there focused outreach that, I'm sorry if you said it and I missed it, to try to capture that population?
Yes, I'm happy to confirm that there was extensive outreach done. I think the team reached out to 8 tribal offices this year, which was similar to last year. We've been trying for many years, but just want to note that we have reached out, and there's more work on the back end to be done. But that initial outreach, the initial communications, and then the flyer send has already been completed for those specific offices.
Okay.
Right, great question. I know that geography was also something that was uplifted by the advisory members, representation from Northern California and the Central Valley. I think that's really important to uplift as well. Comments from board members about that prioritization?
Nothing different than what I said before. I think it's good, I think it's good to prioritize it, certainly recognizing the difficulty sometimes in getting folks from the very tip of the north of California. But yeah, I mean, if we get somebody and they're a good candidate for a variety of other reasons, I think making that selection could provide some rich input.
Okay, so we're prioritizing tribal communities, applicants from Northern California, Central Valley, CSU. Great.
Yeah.
Any changes to the application? Anything that, other than what we discussed in the previous?
Right. The only thing that it was the same recommendation as from previously. It's just moving that chunk, but nothing different. Nothing.
Okay, carrying over those edits. Any additional changes to the rubric?
Yeah, in this particular case, this rubric, the language is a bit different than from the previous one, and everything in column 1 says no description, no experience, no experience. So I would make the same recommendation that I made before, which is just to strike no and put in limited description, limited experience, limited experience.
Great, noting the change to the rubric under the column 1 point to limited experience. So deleting no and adding limited. Okay. Any additional changes?
Sorry, I think I want to amend what I just said. I think what we agreed upon, because I know Julia's over there trying to draft it. I think what we had suggested for the previous rubric was little, not limited. So little description, little experience. Yes, just to keep it, because maybe we can make one giant motion at the end. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Alignment. Yeah.
Okay. So replacing no with little. Perfect. Great. Anything else? Okay. So thank you so much, members, for your thoughts and participation on these really important topics. So in front of us, we have a recommended motion. Mary Kate, for the...
So I'm going to pull down the slide deck for a quick second. And then what we're going to do in the back end is we're going to take the new motion language, which looks like we don't yet have a motion on the table, but potential motion language, should somebody want to make the motion, could look like move to approve the selection process plan presented and edit the application presented to have subset language for practitioner being used for all workforce questions, and editing the rubric presented to striking the no and adding little in the 1 point box. And my understanding is that this would then want to be potentially the changes, as Member Sullivan just mentioned, made to both sets of applications. So it could be one motion. Well, our general counsel can guide us here, but I think it would be kosher for there to be a motion, a roll call. We could also note that it's related to community engagement, data, and tools, and I'm happy to write that in the motion.
I think we could do that as long as the public is given the opportunity to comment and we're clear that we're making a motion for both.
Both.
Yes.
Okay. So
go ahead, Erica.
Apology. No, I was just going to say we have Cynthia who's helpful here in the behind the scenes. I'm happy to add the data and tools community engagement thought in here. Should that be amenable to the chair?
Absolutely.
Okay. One moment, please, and we'll try and get that motion up.
Great, thank you.
You don't want us to just wing it?
So Cynthia, just sharing that the language has been shared. If we would be able to, whenever we have a moment, update the slide deck, if I could just get confirmation for that. Or I'd be happy to share my screen if that's more helpful. Okay, one moment, please.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Mary Kate, are we trying to have a motion that includes both the community engagement and the data and tools? So I have redrafted the motion because there's a typo in this one anyways, so.
Yes, there is. And then confirming that the motion from Julia has been shared with Cynthia. Thank you everybody for your patience. It's still looking like the old language. Give me one moment here.
Okay, thank you.
1 second, I can drop this in. 1 second.
Appreciate your patience, everyone.
Okay, we've got it to fit. Cynthia, I think we're ready to share this slide deck.
Wonderful. So Chair, if you feel
Great.
comfortable, I think that this is a potentially a new motion. And please feel free, or members, should you like to make a motion?
Am I hearing a motion?
I will take responsibility for this. Thank you so much, staff. So I would like to move to approve the Community Engagement and Data and Tools Advisory Boards, to approve the selection process plans presented for both, and to edit the applications presented to have the subset language for practitioner being used for all workforce questions, and editing the rubrics presented to strike the no and adding little in the 1 point box.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Perfect. Wait, with the motion in a second, we will now open it for public comment. Mary Kate Cruz Jones, can you walk us through this section?
Of course, thank you very much. So with, well, happy to open it up for public comment. I am confirming that there is no one at the Cradle-to-Career office at this time that would like to make a public comment. So we are lucky that we can just open it up to our Zoom room. So if there's anybody on the line that is here with us today that would like to make a comment, please raise your little hand. And we'll call on you in that order. I'm sharing that we do have some folks on the line, but I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised. I'll give them, just another second here. Seeing no hands raised, we can close public comment at this time and open it up for a vote. Can I call roll?
Sorry about that. Yes, we have a motion in a second. So if you can call roll, please. Thank you.
Fabulous. Okay. Member Gonzalez Vasquez.
Yes.
Member Sullivan.
Yes.
Member Jez. Member Nellum. Member Vu.
Yes.
All right. We have 3 ayes. The motion passes.
Great. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate that discussion and walking us through those 2 really important discussion points. Now, this section is reserved for public comment. Mary Kay Cruz-Jones, do you want to walk us through this?
Please. Now we'll open it up for public comment. This is just general public comment. Should anybody like to generally speak, feel free to raise your hand. There's again nobody with us here in Sacramento, so we'll open it up to the Zoom room. Please raise your hand. Seeing no one with a hand raised, I'm happy to close public comment with no public comment taken at this time. Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to the future agenda items. And we will open it up to members, followed by members of the public to comment on any requests, items that you would like to see discussed as future agenda items. Governing board members, any comments, suggestions on what we can discuss for the future in future agenda items? Excuse me. Member Sullivan?
Yeah, I just, in terms of comments, want to thank staff so much for organizing this so well. That was very easy to follow. I know Mary Kate was trying to do a little briefing with me prior to this meeting to help me with all of these materials. We were never able to connect, but I will say that the materials were so well organized and the presentation was so well organized. At no time did I feel lost so I want to really appreciate staff's work always. And I have, as somebody who's new to this particular sort of subcommittee, I have no thoughts on what we should discuss in the future. I would leave that to Member Vu.
Thank you so much. Member Vu?
No, nothing to add. Just echo Aaron's comments. Just really appreciate all of the hard work of the C2C crew. It's even for shorter meetings like this, it's still a lot of work. So appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much, Member Vu, and thank you to all staff. I really appreciate this. My first time chairing, so also echoing thanks and gratitude to C2 staff. Now we're going to open it to for public comment. Mary Kate?
Perfect. With no one here in Sacramento, again, made that very clear. We can open it up to Zoom. So please raise your hand should you like to make a comment. I'll give you a moment now, seeing no hands raised. Seeing no hands raised, I'm happy to close this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now we will move on to agenda item 8, adjournment. So thank you everyone who joined us today, specifically our our two committee members and the entire C2C staff for your ongoing support and the public for their invaluable input and support. Our achievements are the restful collective collaboration and your ongoing support has been invaluable to our success. As a reminder, the advisory board member applications will be released on C2C's website tomorrow, April 29th. And the applications will be due by Monday, May 19th at 11:59 p.m. Again, 11:59 p.m., not noon, not at midnight. I encourage all interested members of the public to apply and look forward to reading everyone's application in the next coming weeks. Our next committee meeting will take place on Friday, June 27th. This will be a hybrid meeting with a physical location in Sacramento. There will also be an opportunity to join this meeting virtually through Zoom, and more information will be forthcoming on C2C's website. In addition, I would encourage interested members of the public to join the governing board at our next meeting on Friday, May 9th. Okay, with that, I would like to adjourn the meeting at 11:46. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your week.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.